You say you are tired, and I hear that, I feel that, but I must ask, are you merely tired, or are you spiritually drained? There is a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot touch, a kind of emptiness that food cannot fill, a kind of ache that no massage can soothe, no vacation can heal, and no entertainment can distract from. This is not about your muscles. This is about your soul. You rise in the morning, already heavy. The day hasn't begun, yet you feel the weight of it press against your chest. You move through your schedule, the calls, the messages, the obligations, and yet, somewhere deep inside, something remains untouched and screaming. You are not lazy, you are not weak, you are not broken in the way they told you. You are spiritually depleted because you've been running from yourself. Yes, the real you, the quiet one, the wild one. The one you silence in favor of what is expected, what is accepted, what is rewarded. You've worn the mask for so long, you have forgotten the face beneath it. You smile when you ache. You work when your soul begs you to stop. You give when your inner well is dry. And when you finally sit down, exhausted, there's no peace, only a gnawing emptiness. Because exhaustion isn't always about what you've done. It's about what you haven't done. You haven't sat with yourself in years. You haven't truly listened to what your own spirit is asking of you. You haven't allowed yourself to scream, to cry, to rage, to mourn, to be wild, to be nothing, to be human. We live in a time where exhaustion has become a badge of honor. To be tired is to be seen as hardworking, responsible, even admirable. And so we walk through life repeating the same phrase, I'm just tired. We say it to friends, to coworkers, to ourselves. But what if the tiredness you speak of isn't simply the result of a long week, a lack of sleep, or too many obligations? What if it's something deeper, something more elusive and much more important? What if you are not just tired, but spiritually drained? The body and the spirit speak in different languages, and yet we have trained ourselves to hear only the body's voice. If our muscles ache, we rest. If our eyes are heavy, we sleep. If our chest is tight, we blame stress and take shallow breaths until it passes. But the soul is subtle. It does not shout, at least not at first. It whispers. It nudges. It sends dreams, symbols, longings, and strange discomforts. And when we do not listen, and most of us don't, it begins to break through in more desperate ways. Fatigue that sleep cannot touch, anxiety with no obvious cause, numbness that lingers even in joy. Spiritual exhaustion is not cured by a nap. It is not alleviated by a day off or a weekend getaway, because it has nothing to do with the physical world and everything to do with the disconnection from your inner world. You can be young and strong and physically healthy, and yet feel as though you are dragging a mountain with you each day. You can sleep for 10 hours and wake up with a heaviness that defies explanation. That is not physical tiredness. That is the soul crying out. That is a depletion of meaning. We are souls pretending to be people, not the other way around. And when the soul is neglected, the person begins to collapse. This is why no amount of self-care routines, productivity hacks, or lifestyle changes will touch the root of your exhaustion if what you're actually lacking is purpose. Not goal-oriented ambition, but soul-level purpose. Meaning, depth, a life lived in alignment with who you really are beneath the mask. And we are trained from an early age to wear masks, to be good, to be impressive, to fit into the machine of society. We learn to please, we learn to chase achievement, we learn to suppress the strange, the intuitive, the mystical parts of ourselves, the very parts that connect us to something deeper. And every time we betray our true selves to conform, something inside grows weaker. We adapt, but we also diminish. That is why you feel tired in rooms filled with people. That is why you feel heavy in jobs that pay well but feed you nothing. That is why you feel hollow at moments that should be joyful. It's not depression, it's not burnout, it's not just stress. It's the ache of the soul that has not been heard. It is the deep inner self knocking on the door you've kept shut for too long. Until you address that spiritual thirst, until you ask what your soul truly longs for, no amount of physical rest will ever be enough. You can't sleep away spiritual starvation. The only remedy is to listen. To slow down enough to feel, to stop numbing yourself with noise, and finally hear what your inner world is trying to tell you. Because the truth is, you are not just tired, you are spiritually drained, and it is time to come back home. There is a part of you that you do not show to the world. It is not polished, not presentable, not easy to explain. It holds your rage, your sorrow, your jealousy, your fear, all the things you've been taught to hide, deny, or reject. This part of you waits quietly in the dark corners of your unconscious, but it is far from silent. It whispers in your dreams. It stirs in your reactions. It slips out in moments of fatigue or stress when your guard is down. This is your shadow, not a flaw, not a weakness, but a fundamental part of your wholeness that you've been taught to disown. You were not born fragmented. As a child, you were a whole being, wild, instinctive, open, unfiltered. You laughed when you felt joy. You screamed when you were angry. You cried freely. You followed your curiosity. But over time, you learned what was acceptable. You were praised for being calm, obedient, pleasant. You learned to silence parts of yourself in order to be loved, to belong, to be safe. Bit by bit, your wholeness was carved into pieces. The parts that were not welcomed were pushed away into the unconscious, where they became the shadow. The shadow is not evil, it is not your enemy. It is simply the forgotten self, the unloved self, and what is unloved does not vanish, it waits, and the longer it waits, the more it festers. Not because it wishes to harm you, but because it longs to be seen, to be integrated, to come back into the light. This forgotten self is not idle. While you move through your days wearing your socially approved mask, the shadow waits for the moment to speak. It appears in sudden outbursts, in patterns that repeat themselves despite your best intentions, in irrational fears, in strange dreams, in behaviors you can't explain. It appears not to sabotage you, but to say, I am still here and I am part of you. To ignore this part of yourself is to split your being in two. You become a performer, someone who operates on the surface, while the depths remain unexplored and unacknowledged. This is not living. This is surviving through imitation. And over time, this split leads to deep spiritual exhaustion, because it takes immense energy to maintain a false self, to constantly suppress what is real, to pretend to be whole while secretly feeling broken. This is where spiritual depletion begins, in the refusal to integrate the full spectrum of who you are. You may feel like you are losing energy, when in truth, your energy is being consumed by the battle within. One part of you striving to appear good, strong, in control, while another part weeps for attention in the shadows. You are not tired because life is too much. You are tired because your inner life is divided. The path to healing does not lie in perfection or performance. It lies in integration. To face the shadow is not to indulge it, but to understand it, to listen, to accept that you are both light and dark, both love and fear, both control and chaos. True peace is not found in becoming only your best self. It is found in accepting your whole self, and that includes the parts you've disowned. To meet the shadow is to reclaim your power, because every part of you that you exile holds energy, insight, creativity, and wisdom. When you bring it home, you do not become less, you become more alive, more real, more whole. The soul does not demand perfection. It asks only for truth, and the truth is, the forgotten self has been waiting for you. Every day we play a role, sometimes many roles: the professional, the parent, the achiever, the friend, the responsible one, the strong one. We wear these roles like masks, adjusting them depending on who we're with, what we think is expected, or how we want to be perceived. This is what we call the persona, the version of ourselves crafted to interact with the world, to belong, to be accepted. But what happens when we live only through this mask, when the persona becomes not just a role we play, but the only self we allow to exist? This is not a question of deception. The persona is not inherently bad. It's a necessary part of functioning in society. It helps us navigate relationships, social expectations, and the practical realities of life. But the danger arises when the persona becomes a prison, when we begin to believe we are the mask. When we identify so deeply with the image we present to others that we lose touch with the self behind it. That disconnection is subtle at first, but over time it becomes a source of deep, quiet suffering. You might feel it as an emptiness after a successful day, or as a sense of alienation in a room full of people who admire you. You smile, you perform, you say the right things, but underneath it all, something feels hollow. That is the cost of living through the persona alone. You become a reflection, an echo, a character in someone else's play. Your soul, buried under layers of performance, begins to dim, and when your inner truth is denied long enough, the spirit starts to rebel. We're taught early to value the external over the internal, achievements over authenticity, applause over alignment. We learn that certain behaviors bring love, praise, and reward, while others bring discomfort, judgment, or rejection, and so we shape ourselves to fit. We become adaptable, likable, safe. But in that shaping, we often sacrifice what is raw and real, the very essence of who we are. The false self, the over-identification with the persona, thrives on approval. It feeds on performance. It survives by keeping you busy, productive, and outwardly focused, but it cannot sustain your spirit. The soul does not care about how well you play your role. It cares about whether you are being true. And when the false self dominates your life, your soul begins to wither from lack of attention, lack of expression, lack of presence. This is not a matter of quitting your job or walking away from responsibilities. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you've silenced in order to be accepted. It's about recognizing that behind the mask, there is a voice that hasn't spoken in years. A part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. That part is still alive, waiting patiently, sometimes painfully, to be seen. To live only through the persona is to live half a life. It is to smile while grieving, to say yes while your body screams no, to perform connection while feeling isolated within. It's spiritual dissonance, and it drains you. Not all exhaustion comes from doing too much. Some of it comes from being too little of yourself for too long. Freedom begins the moment you ask, "Who am I when no one is watching? What parts of me have I hidden to be loved? What would it mean to live in alignment with my soul, not just my image?" It takes courage to take off the mask. But what you find underneath that quiet, unfiltered, honest self is the source of your vitality. It's the root of your creativity, your intuition, your capacity for deep connection. When you reclaim that self, you don't just heal, you come alive. The persona can stay, it has its place, but let it be the servant of the soul, not its master. Let your truth lead, and your spirit will begin to restore its fire. You say you're tired. You imagine the cure might be more sleep, a few days off, a better routine, or perhaps a vacation to recharge. And yet, when those things come, the tiredness remains. It lingers. You wake up just as heavy. You return from rest feeling no more whole than before. That is because what you're experiencing is not merely a lack of rest. It's a lack of meaning. Your soul is not asking for sleep. Your soul is asking for something deeper, purpose. We have mistaken our spiritual hunger for physical exhaustion. We assume that if we feel drained, we must be doing too much. But often, the real cause is not how much you're doing, it's what you're not doing. You're not living in alignment with your inner truth. You're not engaging in what nourishes your spirit. You're not walking a path that feels meaningful to your deeper self. And meaning for the soul is not optional. It is air. It is food. It is what keeps the inner flame burning. There's a deep yearning inside of you that sleep can't touch. It's a longing that doesn't go away with a full night of rest or a quiet weekend. It's the ache of a soul that hasn't been heard, a spirit that has been buried under obligation, performance, and distraction. You may have achieved much, you may be admired, but admiration is not meaning. Success is not soul. You can check every box and still feel empty, because meaning isn't something handed to you. It's something you must seek, create, and surrender to. We live in a world that encourages motion, not depth. We are trained to be busy, to be efficient, to be constantly producing. But the soul does not move at that pace. The soul moves like a river, slow, winding, patient. It speaks in silence, in symbols, in longings and dreams. If you don't make time to hear it, it doesn't stop speaking, it just goes unheard. And when the soul is unheard long enough, it starts to manifest as fatigue, as numbness, as a chronic sense of disconnection. That disconnection is a crisis of meaning, and no external fix can resolve it. You can't schedule your way out of spiritual depletion. You can't organize or optimize or hustle your way into purpose. Meaning comes only when you stop running and start listening. Your spirit is not looking for comfort. It's looking for truth. It's not asking you to be more productive. It's asking you to be more real, more alive, more in tune with what matters to you beneath the noise of the world. This is why people feel most energized not when they've rested, but when they've remembered why they're alive, when they've touched something sacred, when they've created something honest, when they've helped someone in a way that aligns with their core, when they've spoken a truth that had been locked inside for too long. You don't need another night of sleep. You need to feel alive again, and aliveness doesn't come from leisure, it comes from meaning. From knowing your life is in service of something greater than survival or approval. From knowing that your actions, your voice, your presence matter not because they're impressive, but because they're authentic. Ask yourself, what part of me have I silenced to fit in? What truth have I ignored to stay safe? What lights my inner fire, not the fire of ambition, but the fire of purpose? You are not just tired. You are unfulfilled. Your soul is not asking for rest. It's asking to be awakened. And when you begin to live in alignment with meaning, even in small, quiet ways, the heaviness starts to lift. Because meaning is what the soul is made of. And without it, we don't just become tired. We begin to disappear. There is a kind of silence that is healing and another that is dangerous. The healing silence is chosen, the silence of retreat, reflection, of conscious stillness. But the dangerous kind is imposed, the silence of avoidance, repression, denial. Many of us live with the latter, not because we want to, but because we have been trained to fear the voice within. We fill our days with noise, endless tasks, constant stimulation, digital distractions, not to stay informed or entertained, but to drown out what is quietly rising in us. There is a voice inside you. It speaks in subtle ways, a restlessness that won't go away, a sadness that doesn't have a name, a longing that doesn't make sense. You brush it aside, assuming it's just mood or fatigue. But that voice is not confusion, it is clarity waiting for your attention. It is the voice of your soul, the deepest self that sees far beyond what your mind can explain. And for many of us, that voice has been ignored for years. We were not raised to listen inward. We were raised to look outward, to be agreeable, appropriate, successful. To suppress what is strange, painful, or inconvenient. But in doing so, we turned down the volume on the very guidance system that was meant to lead us toward truth. And the result is spiritual fragmentation. You begin to lose the thread of your own life. You no longer know what you want, what you need, what you believe. You wake up with a vague dread, a sense that something is missing even when nothing appears to be wrong. This is not a mystery. It is the consequence of silence. When you do not allow yourself to speak from the soul, to express, to question, to weep, to rage, to wonder, you do not just silence your pain. You silence your power. You bury the part of you that knows the way. The soul does not shout. It will not compete with the noise of modern life. It will not argue with your ego or beg for attention. It waits patiently until you're ready to hear, and when you are, it will begin to speak through everything. Through discomfort, through synchronicity, through art, through crisis, through dreams. But the first step is always the same. You must choose to listen. And listening is not easy, because to truly hear your soul means you must be willing to unlearn, to let go of ideas you've clung to for safety, to face emotions you've avoided, to admit that the life you've built, the image you've projected, might not be in alignment with your truth. This is why so many people avoid the voice within, because it asks not for comfort, but for transformation. But here is the paradox. What we fear will destroy us is often the very thing that will set us free. When you finally allow yourself to really hear your inner voice, something miraculous begins to happen. Clarity returns, integrity strengthens. You stop living from the outside in and begin living from the inside out. This doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities or rejecting the world. It means realigning how you move through it. It means speaking more honestly, choosing more consciously, showing up more authentically. And as you do, the spiritual fatigue that once weighed you down begins to lift, not because you've rested, but because you've remembered who you are. Your soul has never stopped speaking. It's been whispering through your exhaustion, through your dissatisfaction, through your quiet knowing that there must be more. Now is the time to stop silencing it. Now is the time to listen. Because in listening, you begin to live again, not as a mask, not as a role, but as your whole sacred self. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not weak because you feel lost, heavy, or unsure. What you are is out of alignment. There is a difference, a profound one, between being damaged and being disconnected from your center. And it is this disconnection, not some imagined flaw, that is the true root of your suffering. What you long for is not to be fixed, but to be found by yourself, to return to the truth of who you are, beneath the conditioning, the expectations, the noise. The modern world pulls us away from ourselves in 1,000 subtle ways. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with information, pressure, distraction. Our attention is scattered, our energy fragmented. We begin to orbit around external forces, deadlines, notifications, comparisons, fears. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, we are pulled away from our center. That inner place of stillness, clarity, and presence becomes a distant echo. You may feel this as anxiety, as indecision, as a vague sense of unreality. You go through the motions, but something essential is missing. That something is not ambition, it's not motivation. It's your center, your alignment with the core of your being. When you're aligned, you move through life with a quiet confidence. You trust yourself, you feel your choices rather than analyze them endlessly. You respond instead of react. You are not perfect, but you are whole. Spiritual exhaustion is the consequence of too many days lived outside that wholeness. It accumulates when you say yes while meaning no, when you silence your intuition in favor of pleasing others, when you abandon your values for the sake of fitting in. Every small compromise of your truth may seem harmless, even necessary, but over time, they amount to a great loss, the loss of yourself, and the soul does not tolerate that loss quietly. It begins with fatigue, yes, but also with emptiness. With the sense that life has become mechanical, drained of color. The passions that once moved you feel distant. Relationships feel shallow. You struggle to connect, not because you don't care, but because your own roots have lifted from the soil of your being. You are not grounded in what matters. You are not centered in what is real for you, and yet the soul is patient. It does not abandon you. Even in the most disconnected states, it leaves you breadcrumbs, little moments of clarity, of emotion, of beauty. A passage in a book that feels like truth. A sudden wave of grief that makes no logical sense. A fleeting desire to be alone, to be quiet, to simply be. These are not interruptions. They are invitations. They are your soul's way of saying, come back, I am still here. To realign with your center is not a grand spiritual achievement. It is a return to simplicity. It is a turning inward. It is the willingness to pause, to feel, to listen again to what is true beneath the noise. Sometimes this means walking away from things that look good but feel wrong. Sometimes it means reclaiming a part of yourself you were taught to hide. Sometimes it means saying no, not to be selfish, but to be honest. The journey back to your center is not linear. It will ask you to be brave, to be soft, to be curious. But with each step, something begins to shift. The fog starts to lift. The heaviness becomes lighter. You begin to recognize yourself again, not the version others expect, but the one that has always lived quietly within. This is the beginning of renewal, not through achievement, not through effort, but through alignment. You are not just tired, you are misaligned, and the remedy is not more doing, it is more being. More truth, more soul, more you. Come home, the center has been waiting.